Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mercedes Witowski. I'm the Executive Director at the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities. For those of you who are not familiar with the Council, we are authorized within the Federal Developmental Disabilities Act, and our purpose is to help individuals and families participate in the design of their services and supports and assist individuals and families advocate gain access to the services and supports that they need, and live a self-determined, independent, productive life in the community. As Executive Director of the Council and on behalf of the NJCDD, we are pleased to provide a level of funding for this conference series through a community innovation project, and very grateful to the Collaborative for Citizen-Directed Services in submitting an application to resurrect this conference. We're also very grateful to the many hours of volunteer efforts in bringing these sessions about. I want to especially thank tonight's panelists for prioritizing this session in your busy schedules, and to all of you that have joined and those that will watch this session in the future. I also want to share with you that I am a single parent of 2 children. My 32-year-old daughter, Tina, became disabled after she suffered a massive stroke when she was 16 years old. Tina lives at home with me and benefits from the many services and supports that we'll hear about tonight. So, what can you expect tonight? This session is dedicated to an overview of the various stakeholders in the self-direction space. We'd like you to meet individuals, families, and system professionals, and a self-directed employee who utilize and work in self-direction, and hear from those throughout this session, and then later this week, part 2 of this session, we'll, I'll say dig deeper into the topics we'll hear about tonight. The part 2 session on Thursday will have 5 sessions that will run from noon until 6 p.m. You can register for all or selected sessions in that series of 5. The topics are recruiting, hiring, and managing SDEs, selecting supports and services, understanding the FI model options, supports brokerage services, and supports coordination services. And then there'll be 4 additional sessions after this week's part 1 and 2. And again, you'll be able to dig even deeper. There'll be an evening at the end of the month where it'll be totally your turn to ask questions with a variety of system partners on hand. So tonight's session is set up as a Zoom webinar session with only panelists in view, since this is mostly a listening session. I'm excited that these sessions are being recorded because they will give you an on-demand reference point in the future. If you're currently even watching tonight, you'll be able to go back and listen in on something, or for people that were not able to join tonight. But it's great to see almost 100 of you joining our session tonight. I'm also glad that we're holding this series in March, which is National Disabilities Awareness Month. Before we really get started, I wanted to frame the conference session in a way that I'll quote a woman named Judy Herman. She is an international disability activist. And if you don't know her, I would encourage you to check her out. But Judy said something that sticks with me, and that is that independent living is not doing things by yourself. It's about being in control of how things are done. And being in control of how things are done. So no one has to think of being out there alone. And hence our conference series title, We Are All in This Together. So to get us started this evening, I'm going to take a few minutes and go through some words that we'll use. We're going to hear the terms self-determination, person-centered planning, and self-direction. I'm going to try to provide a little bit of a framework, because while these can easily be connected, they do mean different things. So if we could think of self-determination as the broader term that describes a person's freedom to choose and set goals and develop dreams about what's important in their lives. And then person-centered planning is a process that's used to help people and those supporting a person with a disability to determine what's important to them, keeping in mind that the person with a disability is at the center of the process. The person-centered planning process helps us to identify the person's strengths, goals, medical needs, paid and unpaid services and supports that they might get, and their desired outcomes. And this process, this person-centered planning process, helps to develop the plan, goals, and objectives to support an individual. Many times there's others supporting the individual. And for example, my daughter asks that I participate in her person-centered planning process and many aspects of how she's determining how to live her life. So someone can lead a self-determined life using the person-centered planning process and set goals with or without using self-directed services. Okay, because self-directed services is a method to achieve self-determination. It's an approach to achieve self-determination, because provider-managed services can also lead someone to a self-determined life using a planning process to get there. So what's also important to know is that one choice doesn't rule out the other. And I'll share that in my daughter's support system, she has chosen, how to spend her time and the goals that she has for herself. And with my assistance, she uses a provider for some of those support needs. And then she uses self-directed services for other support needs. So you can use a combination of the two. So now let's dig in a little deeper on what is self-directed services and what is that method or approach. And if you have specific questions about any of these terms, if I'm going too fast, if there's an acronym that I use or any of the panelists use, please use the Q&A to ask your question, and one of the panelists will be able to respond to you. The chat has been disabled in this session because, again, it's mostly a listening session, but please, we encourage you to use the Q&A. So in this digging deeper on the self-directed services method or the approach, self-directed services in New Jersey is that method that we'll cover in this topic and in this conference series. And it's being covered for the services in the DDD system, the supports program or the community care program, and the personal care assisted services that can be self-directed through the personal preference program. The ability to self-direct these services provides the individual with increased choice and control over how and from whom they receive their services and supports. So while someone can have more decision-making in this model, that also comes with a level of responsibility to manage those supports. And you'll hear more about those additional responsibilities tonight. So there's a number of reasons why individuals decide to self-direct services. And in my experience, typically it's because they want more control on who provides their supports and actually like who they hire to be their support staff. And I hear that a lot. But then also when the support staff are available, the hours of the day, the days of the week, that's important to many individuals. And we refer to the staff that provide these supports in the self-directed model as self-directed employees, or SDEs. So I've also heard from folks who need staff, very early in the morning, like 6 a.m. And they need them to work until 8 a.m., 2 hours, and then come back maybe later in the day to help with an evening routine and getting things wound down for the day and prepared for the next day. These folks have told me that it's challenging to find agency staff who can work short blocks of time and then be there in the morning for that short block and then again later in the day. So self-direction can be a solution for folks needing very specific schedules that don't follow a more typical 9-to-5 weekday schedule. Now, that's not to say that agencies cannot provide a varied schedule of staffing, but we hear that it's not as typical and sometimes difficult to get that varied schedule. I've also heard from individuals and families who have loved ones that are not being supported successfully in a provider-managed residential setting. And I want to point out that in the DDD system, that self-directed services can be an option to assisting someone in living in an apartment or at home with family with a high degree of support staff and support services. So my longstanding experience is that when a person decides to self-direct and to hire their own staff, they also often pull from a different pool of candidates than agency providers might pull from. And what I mean by that is self-directing employees are often family members, neighbors, friends, people who typically may not work for an agency and aren't traditional staff in the provider pool. So in effect, this model really is important in also expanding the workforce for people with disabilities. So in self-direction, the fiscal management services or the fiscal intermediary, the FI, are delivered in New Jersey using two different models: the vendor fiscal employer agent model with public partnerships, or the agency with choice model with Easter Seals, New Jersey. And just a brief description and distinction about these two models. In the vendor fiscal employer agent model with public partnerships, the individual is the employer of record. PPL services both the personal preference program and the DDD supports program and community care program. And these individuals can have a representative, but it is the individual that serves as the employer of record, and PPL acts as the fiscal intermediary or the fiscal agent. In the agency with choice model with Easter Seals is the employer of record, and the individual or their representative is the managing employer. Easter Seals services the DDD supports program and community care program, not the personal preference program. So I'm going to put a plug in here for a guide that was produced by DDD and the Boggs Center entitled Understanding Self-Directed Services in New Jersey and the Role of the Supports Broker. It's a 24-page guide that provides many excellent details about DDD's self-directed services with charts and graphs and a real hold it in your hands ability to read through and look at how the self-directed services are laid out, as well as the role of the support broker. And I was going to ask Javier if he could just put that link in the chat. So I hope that in whatever method we use to get the services we need, again, by method, I'm referring to self-directed or provider managed, that everyone has selected the approach or the method based on what makes the most sense for them. And if you select one method today, it doesn't take away your ability to switch your method. I know that sounds easier said than done, because it's a lot that goes into provider managed and self-directed services. But just to point out that you don't get locked into one or the other. And as I mentioned, you have the ability to use both. The other important thing to point out is that the self-directed method may not be for everyone. And that's perfectly okay, since it's an option available, and I'm grateful that we live in a state that has more options in self-direction than many other states. And if I heard correctly at the last pre-conference session, New Jersey has the most individuals self-directing services than any other state. So glad we're living here. Does it make the system perfect? Absolutely not. But we do have more choice and more options. The other important thing to point out is that we're mostly talking about the ability to self-direct these federal and state funds. So self-direction doesn't mean getting a blank check. That is not the way self-direction works. There's a level of rules and responsibilities that come along with self-direction. And that's where it can get confusing. And I hope that in this conference series, we're going to provide information that will help you understand self-direction better and provide resources if this is a method that you either currently use or decide to explore in the future. So as you listen to the conversation with tonight's panelists, please keep in mind that they're sharing their personal and/or business-related experiences. We want to give you the opportunity to hear from folks using the system and those providing the various components of self-determination, person-centered planning, and the New Jersey self-directed models. We want to respect everyone's time and those participating as panelists tonight. So please, again, use the chat, use the Q&A, I should say, to seek clarification about the concepts, the services, the definitions that we're discussing. And remember that we do have that dedicated session on March 24th, where it's your turn to ask questions. We're not sure that we'll get to many questions tonight, but we will fit in whatever we can. We do only have the 90 minutes, and we have over a dozen panelists, again, which we're very grateful for. I can assure you, though, that the conference planning team will take any of the comments that you put in the chat, I'll say it again, in the Q&A, and make sure that we'll take those into consideration for the remaining sessions this month. Excuse me. So, Steve Gruzlovic, somebody that I got to meet at a self-directed employee Bog Center conference several years ago, and really value your contributions, your dedication to sharing your experiences with others, Steve. So Steve's joining us tonight, and Steve, we're going to start this session by asking you to kind of just describe the benefits of self-direction in your life.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. I just wanted to talk briefly about the benefits of self-direction in my life. So I put a few notes together. The first thing is when you have a disability, it's very difficult to navigate some of these systems and procedures. And you have to kind of figure out, what am I going to do to make my life as independent and as straightforward as possible while receiving the services that I need. So self-direction provided me with a lot of independence and a lot of personal choice. I'd be able to choose who I had come in my house and help me. I'd be able to choose what fiscal model I use to pay that person. I'd be able to choose and be able to negotiate the rate with the individual. With a lot of agencies, you can't do that if you use an agency model. So it's led to a lot of independence for me. I also don't do this alone. I have a tremendous team of people that I've been able to hand select to help me navigate these very complex systems. And they help to arrange the services for me, and we have discussions. Well, ultimately, it's my choice. They're able to give me advice, which I take, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to the decision that I think is best for me, which you can't often do in other models. Additionally, I've been very blessed in my life to be able to share my experience with others through helping families and individuals navigate this complex system as a consultant. So I'm able to come in and provide education and try to navigate the system for people so that it's not so complicated and we can meet an end goal. I also was able to do this as a consultant for corporate businesses as well, and use some self-direction principles in order to help corporate businesses hire individuals with disabilities. If we would like to talk about subject matters such as inclusion for all and making a truly inclusive society, then self-direction is truly one of the main principles to use. And I really hope that this movement continues and that we can make an inclusive society for all.
Well, Steve, again, you just always impress me with how you frame and share your life experience. Can you when you talk about getting advice, and now it sounds like also you're giving advice, is there something that stands out the most to you that people ask you about, that come to you for advice, or the advice that you've been given? Is there a top tidbit or piece of advice that you can share with us?
I think the first thing is choice really matters, and individuals really need multiple choices and multiple options to look at. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all system for disability. I think many people do it differently. People do it in a way that works for them, so that's important. But the most important thing that I think people should really focus on is what is best for the individual. What is going to be the best outcome for the individual? How are they going to live the most independent, fulfilling life? Because as we all know, society is really hard. So let's try to make it a little easier for people.
Yeah, Steve, I hear you on that one. And, I guess when you also talk about choice, I don't know about you, but I know that there's been choices that I've made that aren't maybe the best choice, but you have to learn from that choice in order to get to the next choice. Do you feel the same? Have you found any situations where maybe the first choice wasn't the best choice?
The great thing about the self-directed model is if something does not work, you can almost always go back and choose something different. Or if you have a change in circumstance, your disability changes, you need more assistance, there's always other methods that you can use to try to help yourself and others to make sure you have the most supports possible. So the first step is realizing and accepting that you need help. The second step is being informed and making sure that you make a choice. And if that choice does not work, you can adjust it so that it can work.
Thanks, Steve. More great advice. So I really appreciate your time, and I know that you're going to stick around in case anything comes through that maybe we can follow up with you later from the Q&A. So thanks, Steve. So moving along, I'd like to invite Ann Martinelli. Ann's got two roles, and Ann has many roles. Let's start there. But the two roles that Ann is going to help us cover tonight is a family member role. And so why don't we start there, Ann? And if you could just kind of talk to us about what's important in the self-directed hiring for you and your son, Joe.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And thanks everyone for listening. It wasn't until Joe and I took a 2-day training on person-centered thinking and planning that I really began to understand self-direction and what it meant to be hiring a self-directed employee. We began more than 18 years ago, just thinking of ways to fill Joe's day. That's how I looked at what needed to be done when he was leaving the education system. Okay, what are we doing next? Let's figure out how we're going to fill the day. I concentrated on the what's important for piece, and I was laser focused on making sure someone could secure Joe's wheelchair in his van. Someone would keep him healthy and safe. Obviously, that's extremely important. But what I learned during that person-centered thinking training was that there needs to be a balance between what's important to and what's important for, like the wheelchair tie downs. And did you watch the Yankees last night? There has to be a balance between those two things for Joe. I can teach anyone how to do wheelchair tie downs, and I'll watch them do it. A new self-directed employee, I'll watch them do it 5 times or 25 times until I and they are comfortable doing it on their own. But I'm not going to be out there when Joe is out and about with the self-directed employee. The self-directed employee has to be able to carry on a conversation with Joe about the Yankees. And it's important that the conversation is detailed about the important plays that were in the game last night and the home runs that were hit. Not just, hey, did you watch the Yankees last night? That was a great game. It has to be a real detailed conversation. So these are the things that are important to Joe. He wants people to support him. And also the people he wants to support him, he wants them to be enjoying the same things that he does. Like the Yankees and music on the boardwalk or at a downtown freehold concert here in Monmouth County. They're important to Joe. And these are the questions that he has asked when we interview someone together. He'll ask them what their interests are. He wants to align interests. He and I need to know that their time spent together will include shared interests and fun conversations. It's important to Joe that those who support him also share their lives with him. He wants to hear about their weekend activities and their families. Joe has actually accompanied 2 of his past support staff to purchase engagement rings for their girlfriends, a few years apart, and he attended both of their weddings. So it's important to Joe to share these type of things with those who support him. And while those 2 young men are no longer paid to support Joe, they're still in his life. One regularly FaceTimes Joe just to chat and has stopped at our home unexpectedly when he was in the area. From my perspective, I also want self-directed employees to feel comfortable telling me new ideas, particularly about fun things to do. Since Joe's self-directed employees have always been close to his age, they're going to have different ideas on what fun things to do are, happening in the area. I also find it very important to let self-directed employees know that they're valued members of our team, and things that they observe about Joe outside of the home are extremely important to share with Joe and with me in conversation with both of us. This is a team effort, and it's not just about putting the hours in and filling out timesheets. They teach me and remind me that I may know Joe best, but that I don't know everything about him. So it's important that these self-directed employees are part of Joe's life, not just there filling out a timesheet and getting paid for the hours they spend with him.
Oh, thanks. Yes, and you bring up the critical aspect of building relationships, and that doesn't happen overnight, but no. You can't get to build a relationship unless you've selected a person to build a relationship with. And I think that's what I hear, as you're talking about, that's precious to have that relationship and not have services that are just robotic. And so Joe has those relationships now. He's built them. He's got a team that supports him that way. And has self-direction helped you get to that point?
I'm sorry, you kind of broke there.
Is it self-direction that has helped get you to that point?
It's the those principles in person-centered thinking and planning about building relationships, shared interests, making that balance between what's important and what's important for the person, the health and safety. You know, if everything was focused on one or the other, things are going to happen that aren't going to work.
Right.
But having that healthy balance between the two is what makes it work. And the shared interests is what makes and develops those relationships.
Well, thanks, Anne. So we're gonna put one of your other hats on here, and that's the hat as the managing employer in Joe's plan. So as that managing employer, how do you keep track of his schedule and the hours that are available to him? And I think Joe has multiple programs that he draws staff from. So how do you make sure that those multiple programs don't get confusing and don't cross over?
Yeah, he does use two programs, but it's a little different for both. Obviously, you know, the personal preference program and the DDD piece that he uses are different. At one point, Joe did have 7 part-time self-directed employees through DDD, using his DDD budget. So I'm going to really focus on that piece, because the personal preference piece, he only has one person, and that's you know, a live-in person here, his dad. So I'm going to focus more on the DDD piece, but you're right, I do have to balance, you know, the two sets of hours and making sure there's no overlap. But I do that, and like I said, at one point in time, Joe did have 7 part-time self-directed employees, and he did something different each day, 7 days a week, often seeing 2 different self-directed employees on the same day. Sometimes he would even see 3 on the same day. So obviously that involves a lot of hours, trying to keep, you know, his day, the hours separated, and who did what on what day. So what we did was we bought a large, really very simple, common sense. We bought a large desktop calendar and mounted it on the back of our door, the kitchen door, where the self-directed employees, they enter and leave our home each day. We're very lucky that either my husband or I can be at home when someone arrives and leaves each day. So at the top of each date, I would write what Joe would be doing that day. You know, is he volunteering, taking a class, shopping, going out with friends, going to an outdoor concert? And although each day was different, each Monday would usually be the same. Each Tuesday would usually be the same. So I used a different color marker for each person and noted the time they arrived and left each day. And then at the end of the week, I would total each person's hours and mark it with their designated colored marker. And when I needed to approve and sign a person's timesheet, I had an accurate number of hours that were worked. Now Joe has 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee. So it is a lot easier. And I just use the notes on my phone, the notes app on my phone, and fill in, you know, who checked in, who checked out, and just mark it in there. And then when I need to approve a timesheet, I can check my notes for accurate hours. I also use a monthly calendar template, and I update it each month with the classes Joe now takes either in person or online, the days he volunteers and the days and times of his in-home therapy sessions. I print it out and I give a copy to Joe's 2 current self-directed employees for them to keep wherever they want to keep it, in their car, where they live. And so they know what's happening each day of the week, even if they're not with him. And I also keep one of them on the back door of the kitchen, where I used to keep that big, large calendar. But I also each month review with Joe the activities and talk to him about his continued interest level. You know, does he still want to volunteer at the Habitat for Humanity Restore on Fridays? Does he still want to do it weekly, or does he maybe want to do it twice a month? You know, what are you thinking about for the summer? The Monmouth County Park System just released the other day talking about, is there something you want to do this summer, like a 3-hour class or something. So we also look at the local high school's baseball schedule, see if there's some games that are being played on afternoons that might fit into his schedules. And then we just add that to whatever monthly schedule we have. I can change it online, on the template in my notes. And we just tack it up to the back of the kitchen door again. So somebody's always, whoever's here, whoever's in the home can look at it and know exactly what's going on. Yes, it's work. It takes time. It takes time to figure it out. But that's what works for us, and it works well.
Well, and you're describing a very busy life for Joe, very full life with lots of things that he enjoys doing. And you've found the way to manage all that and bring all that together. And you make it kind of sound simple. I'm sure it's not simple, but once you get into the groove, I imagine it's something that then just becomes part of the routine.
Yes.
So that's terrific, Anne. Thanks for sharing that. Anne's a wealth of information, and I'm always grateful when she gets to talk to families, because you do make something sound like it's doable. So thank you, Anne. Thanks for bringing that to us tonight. Okay, so next up, I'm going to invite Patty Kowalchuk and Steve Roosen of Royal Community Support. And they're going to talk to us about circle members or circles of support. Because as circle of support facilitators and members, what we're hoping is that they'll share with us the critical components in creating and sustaining a circle of support, because it takes more than one person to make all this work. So Steve, Patty, thank you for being with us, and bring us your knowledge.
Well, thanks very much. And I agree with your comments, Mercedes, about Anne. It's always nice to speak in the same context with her, because as a mom, she understands the importance of the relationship piece as well. And I think that that's kind of really inherent in the whole idea of circles of support. So when we think about, what is paramount and critical about having a circle of support, it's really the intention and purpose, taking the time to say, why are we doing this? And I think that, for people who come into the service system as adults with DDD services, it can kind of be compared to kind of moving into a new neighborhood. So when you start using division services, you have to decide, what are the things that I need? And the focus is obviously on paid services, as it should be. It's very important. People need paid services. They're critical to support. But then it's just like moving into that new neighborhood, you figure out where your doctors are that you're going to use. You're figuring out where the stores are, where you're going to buy your stuff. You kind of get that baseline figured out of kind of, what do I need? What's important for me? And then it goes into but what else is there? And for many of us, when we've had that occasion of moving, it's kind of, well, what else? Where are the friendships? Where are the connections? What do I like to do? Where are the places in my community that I can find to do those things? And I think that that's where a circle of support comes in. Because you want to kind of look at how do I make the most of where I am and who I've got. So paid support people in some cases can actually be really helpful in helping to develop that circle of support. And I also want to just say quickly, I think sometimes when people have talked to us about circles of support, they have that understanding that's about the circle of support that some people learn about in school, where you have kind of this, it's about boundaries, and you have like the paid supports out here, and then there are intimate supports. And really, when we're talking about circles of supports, we're talking about support networks. Who are the people that truly are kind of in there because you care? And it takes time. It takes time to identify who those people are, how you want to invite them in, and the way to do that, which all takes different levels of skill and different level of interest. But at the end of the day, I think that really it's about wanting to make that connection. And we all have, disability or not disability, we all have those circles. So really the starting point, I think, is what's the purpose? What's the intention? And at the end of the day, for any of the circles that I've been involved in, it's always come down to, well, the purpose is to have friendships and to have support and to know that someone's got my back. And without those, life could be lonely. And in some cases, people can be at risk. So, starting it's kind of why, why would we do this? And I think the answer comes up pretty clearly. So, and I know, Steve, you're going to talk a little bit more about kind of some specifics around that.
Yes, thank you, Patty. So I'd like to talk to you about the importance of being skillful in both the design and facilitation of circles. The first step is to think about who to invite into a circle. What you don't want to do is invite someone to join the circle to be Johnny's friend. That promotes charity and defeats the purpose of a circle, since it's not about that. You'll want to think about, with Johnny, of course, why someone might be a good circle member, and being strategic in inviting them. You might be having the initial circle to celebrate a birthday, maybe a job, maybe a new apartment, or maybe to watch a Colts game. The next step is to think about intention. You want to be specific about what you're asking a member to commit to. In my case, if I was going to make a circle about myself, I'm a big Indianapolis Colts fan. So I might consider, do I want people to show up to the first quarter of a Colts game at my apartment versus coming to Applebee's for the entirety of the game? Those are two separate situations. One obviously is a time commitment. The other one is a financial commitment. Obviously hosting a game at my apartment is going to probably be cheaper than having people go to Applebee's, which might affect, who shows up and whatnot. People also want to know what they're getting into, and you want them thinking about how to get their feet wet without thinking they are making a lifetime commitment, which is very important. There are three different people. Here are three different people with very different types of circles. The first example I want to give you is this woman named Jen. Jen's circle consisted of people who've previously worked with her over the years. Jen communicated to her circle that she wanted to expand her social network and meet new people, especially people who are not paid to be in her life. The facilitator of her circle asked Jen if she wanted to have a potluck party, perhaps like a competition, where each person would bring their favorite dish. The role of the facilitator also communicated to everyone that the potluck party was not a charity event, but rather an opportunity for people to show off their cooking skills, with obviously the intention of expanding Jen's social network. And obviously it also became an opportunity for everyone in the circle to critique one another's culinary sets, for better or for worse. Another example could be Kurt's circle. His circle formed during the middle of the height of the pandemic. Kurt wanted to create a circle because he wanted to work through some things that made him feel isolated because of COVID. His circle began with inviting mostly people who worked for him in different roles. The circle would meet over Zoom, and Kurt would more or less facilitate with assistance on what he wanted to discuss. Because of COVID, Kurt didn't feel like he had much connection with people, and the circle was a way for him to feel temporarily connected in an unconventional way. But the good news is that Kurt wants to get off Zoom and start meeting in person. The last example I want to give you is Brock's circle. So Brock's circle looks completely different than both Jen and Kurt's circle. Brock's circle helped him figure out where he wanted to move out since he wanted to get out of his parents' house. Brock is someone who doesn't like to make decisions, but wants to be in control of his life, which obviously is very understandable and very relatable, I think, to everyone. The circle consisted of people Brock wanted to invite that he trusted and would help him figure out what his life after his parents' house could be. Brock also doesn't like meetings, but luckily prefers social gatherings with food and music. The circle would meet and spend maybe about 5 to 10 minutes at a time, asking Brock to think about various potential living situations that include everything from location to his expectations on what it would feel like to, who would be there with him in terms of staff. Does he want a roommate? Does he want his parents? How often does he want his parents coming in and out? Because nobody wants their parents, always living with them. So they're pretty big questions. And then after, we'd have those questions with him, we'd have, the party would begin. So basically, I just wanted to show you kind of 3 examples of very different ways in which you can conduct a circle. No two circles are exactly alike, and their true uniqueness reflects in the individualism of the person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Patty.
I just wanted to add that I think that it's important to note that circles will ebb and flow over time. They change. They're never, it's just like our own lives where people come in and out. Everybody's life is different, and that's important. And also that in developing a circle, if you're helping someone develop a circle, it's really important that that person whose circle it is has an understanding of their role. They're not just the object of everybody coming in, but also forming reciprocity in those relationships. So knowing, a simple example is knowing the circle members' birthdays and reaching out on their birthday. How's your birthday? Or somebody has a baby, like, hey, great, so that it's really kind of an interactive support system where the members of the circle feel like they get as much support from being part of it as the person whose circle was formed around. So thanks.
Thanks, Patty and Stephen. I'm going to add one other question onto this, and don't want to put you on the spot, but we also hear from folks who say, how will this self-directed service model live on past me? Who's going to do this when I'm gone? Can you tell us if the circle of support can become something that lives on beyond the parent maybe, or the person who's kind of in control or in helping the person the most today?
How much time we got?
We don't have a lot of time. Give 30 seconds to answer that question, Patty. Probably maybe we should have started, but is it a solution in people's lives? Can it be a solution?
I think if someone wants to, how many parents have we talked to that says, what's going to happen when I'm gone? Right. And if the answer is not having people in your life or in your family member's life who are daughter, son's life, who are not paid to be there, who are going to be there, rain or shine, who are going to show up when other people don't. That is the answer. That's what keeps us all safe. So absolutely, it takes time, but just having, even starting with one person who's like, yeah, I'm here, things can build from there. And, literally people are safer when they have those connections in their life. So yeah, it can sustain it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Patty. Thanks, Steve. We're gonna move into some other people that can kind of help sustain things, and those are the supports within the system, in the PPP system and in the DDD system. And we're going to start with the role of the PPP consultant. And I think Donna Scheirman and Rachel Jinnenbaum are going to help us. I'm just curious, what's the most frequently asked question about how PPP works? And, what does the consultant do to help support that PPP program participant or their representative in understanding the PPP program? Donna, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you, Mercedes. We get asked by new folks as well as existing participants in the program, of the personal preference program. How do I get started? How is my employee paid? Who determines the budget? Am I responsible for taxes? So I just want to break that down a little bit. How do I get started is in the PPP program is you must have a prescription from your medical provider for personal care assistant services required for longer than 6 months. Once you have that, you can reach out to your managed care organization. There are 5 in New Jersey, and you can request PCA assessment. And once your assessment is complete, your managed care organization will provide an options counseling session. At this time, the managed care organization will talk to you about the personal preference program and other options for obtaining home health services. And if you opt to engage with the personal preference program, your managed care coordinator will send you a referral and schedule an initial visit where we can go over the program, help identify what you need to be successful in the program, and provide tips on how to hire an employee. So PPL works hand in hand with the MCO. They started off and then they handed over to us. And then how is my employee paid? When your employee submits hours through the Time for Care application through PPL, which is through our Better Online web portal, telephony or paper timesheets, public partnerships will process the timesheets and pay your employees as long as their timesheet meets the program rules. very similar to ADP. Your consultant will also be able to, and that's another payroll organization, your consultant will be able to help you work on any denied timesheet reasons. Your employee will be able to select their desired way of getting paid, either by paper check, direct deposit, or an ADP card. So I'm gonna, so you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time. I'm gonna hand it off to Rachel to answer, you know, who determines the budget and am I responsible for taxes? And then I'll just like wrap it up after that.
All right, thank you, Donna. So I'm going to handle who determines the budget. So the managed care organization determines the budget amount based on an assessment for the personal care assistance services. They will complete the assessment with you prior to you being referred to the program. They determine the level of services needed, which would then be converted into your monthly budget. You would then be able to engage in both budget authority, which basically allows you to make decisions about your budget and how best you want that to be used. And then also you are engaged as the employer authority, which means that you are making decisions about who you want to hire, how you want to train them and inform them as to what and when they need to do to help you. And then going now to who is responsible for the taxes. Are you responsible? So basically we have two sets of taxes. We have employer related taxes and we have employee taxes. So since the program helps you create a business to hire a caregiver, business employer taxes are taken from the budget and paid on a quarterly basis. So public partnerships will file taxes on your behalf and no action is needed from you. And employer taxes varies. This information can be seen in your budget summary in the Better online portal. Employee taxes are determined based on their W-2s and also they are taken out bi-weekly from their paycheck. And to identify the total, the employee may review their pay stubs. So Donna, I'm going to pass it right back to you to wrap it up.
Thank you, Rachel. I know this is a lot of information, and I think, you know, as Mercedes said, thankfully we are recording this and you can go back and listen and go over the details. But really, as consultants at PPL, we provide support frequently throughout the participants' enrollment in the program. The support may come from scheduled contacts such as monthly or quarterly calls or visits. You know, with the pandemic, we're doing calls, and hopefully we'll get back to a new normal and do our in-person visits. But you know, you can certainly, if you have ad hoc questions, you can certainly go to your consultant and work with them and ask them, you know, to help you manage through an issue or a concern or just some kind of a training need or any kind of ad hoc questions. So when you're first enrolling in the program, the participant is assigned a consultant who will review the rights and responsibilities of their role. The information is very lengthy, therefore they'll provide monthly calls during the first 6 months of the program to make sure everything is clear, and we provide additional support if needed. A consultant will also complete a quarterly visit every 3 months. During these visits, we'll ask routine questions, provide updates, and more. Topics such as budget authority, employer authority, timesheet submissions, routinely reviewed with the participant and any other person they may want to include in the conversation. You know, like we said, you know, you don't have to do this alone. We're all in this together. Being an employer can be scary. However, with the help of a consultant, the participant can be successful in self-directing their care. So hopefully that answers those questions, Mercedes.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Donna and Rachel, and appreciate your stepping through what the role of the consultant is. And I know that at the session on this Thursday, there's even more in-depth conversation about the role at PPL. So thank you for highlighting the consulting aspect. And you're right. We're not in this alone. We're in this together, and we appreciate the advice and information that consultants can bring to this part of the self-directed services. So thank you. We're going to move into support coordination. We have 3. PPL is the only consultant. You won't have you don't get to choose one necessarily. It's all happens within PPL, but in the DDD system, With support coordination, there are support coordination agencies that individuals can make a selection from. So we invited 3 different support coordination units into this session tonight. We have Christina Rappisi with Values into Action. We have Amy Watts with Neighbours, and we have Rachel Bernini with SAM. So I see you're all there on the screen. Great. So you're going to each take a turn at answering the question about what would you say is the most valuable assistance or service that a support coordinator provides to a person and their family when considering self-direction. So this could be somebody who's using it, or probably more so somebody who's, doesn't really know about it yet. Can you tell us what's the kind of assistance that a support coordinator can provide in explaining self-direction and helping a person understand what's involved? And I think, Amy, we're going to start with you.
I'll get us started. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate everyone coming out. I've had families tell me when they first come into the self-directed service or kind of adult services that it felt like they fell off this cliff and kind of don't know what it is that's going on. So I'd say your support coordinator is that person that's sort of on the bottom of that ravine who picks you up, dusts you off, and then helps you kind of continue on. One of the wonderful things your support coordinator can do for you, one of the great services we provide, is that we answer questions and we're there. So as you've noticed, there's sort of the ABC alphabet soup of support services. Your support coordinator is someone that can define and can explain and can help you navigate these systems that are there that are wonderful, but because they're wonderful and so rich, they're also very complicated. Even if you are shifting support coordination agencies, because as Steve well aptly said, it's about choices. So you can even do a choice of a support coordination agency. So if that support coordinator or even just that agency's mission, vision, and values isn't really matching what works for you, you can go find one that does. But then you're sort of starting the relationships all over again. I've heard from my families when we've done some surveys is one of the things that they greatly appreciate is that we answer the phone. So I get the wonderful phone calls that are like, I don't know if you can help me with this, but you're the one that answers. So I'm going to call it and I'm going to see if we can just talk this through or figure it out. And I wish the families that call me were calling me with a wonderful story about their vacation or a great recipe for apple pie, but they're usually not. They're calling because they have a problem or something that needs to be figured out and thought through. And even if I don't have an answer, I find that they appreciate that that I'll go find it. So either I find another person for them to talk to, or I find another resource for them to do. Even if I don't have an answer, I try to connect them to somebody who does have the answer. And I think that's just knowing that you can pick up the phone and call a person and get that it feels really good, especially as someone who's trying to, as I said, navigate a somewhat complicated system. And I know Christina's got even more to expand on that.
Thanks, Amy. So support coordination in my mind and what we do every day is really being that partner to help reach your true vision in life for self-direction. So we're like your sidekick throughout the process. We're connecting you to both paid and unpaid services, helping you talk through your thoughts and ideas, and then putting them into action. And as Amy had mentioned, it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot coming at you, especially being new to the system and starting, at the very first step. There's all of these questions and ideas thrown at you. So support coordination really breaks that down for you and walks you through each step. So you may have a plan for your life and a vision for your life, but then we help break that apart and start, okay, first, let's get this together. Once you're comfortable and confident doing A, then let's move to the second part. And then we may connect you to a different service or community resource. And then from there, once you get comfortable with that, then we'll move on to the next thing. And say you want to change your mind at any time and something's not working for you, you change your mind, you thought you'd like cooking class and now you really hate cooking and you want to take art class. And then you take art class and you figure out, I hate art, I just want to go do some yoga. We're going to help you pick that apart and take it step by step. And really, with all of the panelists that are here, we're linking you to all of these wonderful services. So we're really that person that you're going to pick up the phone and call and say, where do I get started? I want to tell you how I'm feeling, and then you kind of point me in the direction, and then I'll, run with it and see what happens. So really, we're linking you to everyone, both paid, unpaid, talking about life challenges, things you want to do. And I'm sure Rachel has more, and I don't want to take up more time because I know we have a lot of people to talk. So I will hand it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Christina and Amy. And I think to kind of bring together what Amy and Christina and all of us as supports coordinators are really here to do is really providing that support and being competent with that support. Supports coordinators must have a working knowledge of the self-direction model, how you can choose it, who does it, the control and the responsibility that's all associated with self-direction. Beyond knowledge, supports coordinators must also have a belief in the model. Not only is self-direction a viable model of service, but in many cases it's necessary for a lot of individuals and families. And certainly the competency allows supports coordinators to build relationships with individuals and families. And to be competent support coordinators, we must actively listen, collaborate, and be resourceful so that ultimately everyone supported is left better off and living their best life.
You're muted, Mercedes.
Okay, I'm not going to touch the mouse anymore because the mouse just got the best of me. My clicking went too fast. Thank you, Rachel, Amy, and Christina. You've given us each your perspective, but you've come down to the fact that your support coordinator is really an ally with you, right? You're the person who can step through the challenges and hopefully the times to celebrate your life. So we appreciate that. But I think it was Christina who said, it can be overwhelming, right? And that was my cue in terms of segueing to the next part of this panel, which is around supports broker and the role of the support broker, because the support coordinator has a bandwidth with individuals and families that they can go so far. And then some folks need a little bit more than that support coordinator can provide. So Jen Brown, she is joining us tonight from Eros Group, a support brokerage agency. And she's going to take us through that step, that next, what somebody needs beyond support coordination. So I'm going to ask Jen, if you could kind of just describe for us the most requested support broker service and why you think this is that might be the one. And maybe there's more than one, Jen. But let's start with one.
Okay. So I gave a lot of thought to this question, and I talked to some colleagues and coworkers, and the consensus that we came up with the most requested support broker service. It's a combination of finding support staff while connecting people to their community and all it offers. We spend a good deal of time matching people with self-directed employees that live close by to them and share the common interests. We assist people in interviewing and following through with issues of scheduling and managing their staff once they're onboarded. And then we serve as a resource to the person and their staff. That's where we spend a bulk of our time. But right now we support about 85 people, and 90% of them we're finding staff and connecting them to their community. But this is only a small part of the answer and what we do as brokers. So in the manual, it states that we serving as the agent of the participant or family, the service is available to assist in identifying immediate and long-term needs, developing options to meet those needs, and accessing identified supports and services. It is in doing the work to identify the immediate and long-term needs that we often discover the most asked question. We spend a good deal of time getting to know the person and help them strengthen their circle of support. It's really about creating a safe space for the question to bubble up to the surface. In the long run, it does no good to provide any support brokerage service without having these conversations. And we use a variety of person-centered planning tools, including maps and paths, charting the life course, and the Liberty Plan, just to name a few. See, because services can help someone attain their dreams. Services are a tool to help you get there, but services can't provide a good life. They can only play a part of it. It's the balance of what's important to a person and what's important for a person. And with that balance, comes this question, right? This question comes from a place of uncertainty and fear for the future. This fear and uncertainty can create a block to moving forward. So sometimes when we get into a situation where we're finding staff for somebody, we're noticing things, right? Like maybe a large turnover in the staff or some other things. And so we dig deeper. And you guys, Mercedes, you already kind of talked about this with Patty Kowalchuk, right? It's the question is, who will support my loved one self-directing when I'm gone? What does this look like when the primary caregiver is no longer with us, right? There's so much natural support built into self-direction. When it goes away, what's left? Who's there? So we spend a great deal of time developing their circles of support that Patty and Steve talked about, strengthening them, broadening them, connecting people to their community, creating an interdependence, right? It's Judy, go back to Judy's words, right? It's not about an independence, it's that interdependence that we help strengthen. But we don't create a dependency on supports brokerage, because then we're just another service. And with, being just another service in the system, it's not what brings that good life, right? That meaningful life. So on paper, it may look like the most requested service is finding staff and connecting to the community. And it is, like, creating that space for people to show up in their communities and share their gifts and to bring into the community things that the community doesn't even know they're missing. But when we do support brokerage well, we get to the heart of the matter. And that's what makes a support brokerage so important to self-direction, is to help answer that question of what happens when, and thanks so much for bringing it up before, because that's really the service, the work that we do.
Well, thanks, Jen. And if I could also point out that in the PPP system, the consultant is part of the package, right? So you've got the fiscal work that the program provides, and then the consulting work. In DDD, the support coordinator is part of the package. You have a support coordinator, you've got to select a support coordinator to work with in the DDD system, and it's part of the package. Support brokering, it does become a service, a billable service in the system. So you're going to have to designate some funding to do that, but from folks that I've spoken with that have included support brokering in their plans, that's what's making it work. So it's so Jen, do you just want to take a minute on that, because there is a choice that someone has to make to include it with a cost that might come along with it.
Sure. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. When we work in conjunction with support coordination, I think it brings the best of the service system to life, right? It's when we have support brokers or support coordinators that we work with that really understand self-direction and are doing the good work of planning with the person at the center. And then we come along, it's like, it's like left hand, right hand, right? We work together and we really support the person in a meaningful way that wouldn't happen if we weren't working together. I can think of several examples where, we show up and we do some things that, the support coordinators are tasked with so much. And it feels very much like, as we get deeper into the fee for service, it's more and more. And so we're able to take some of that off of their plate, if you will, and develop relationships with the family and strengthen their relationship with the support coordinator and make it so that they're starting to use them more effectively as well. So yeah, I
Thanks,
mean, I'm loving it, doing the work, and I've seen great results with it. Again, it's something that it really needs to be supported on by the support coordinator as well to really make it effective. But yeah, it's very promising. And I feel like it's the answer to the question, what happens when I'm not here for my son anymore?
Right.
So
Thanks,
I'm
Jen.
committed.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.
No
Appreciate
problem.
your.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. So, all of what we've talked about tonight, we don't get very far without the self-directed employee, the person in the system who's doing the work, supporting our loved one, supporting us in the system. So, Joe Wagner, so happy that you're with us tonight.
Good evening.
Appreciate your being here. And we're going to ask you to tell us kind of how you learned about an opportunity to be a self-hire and why did you pursue this opportunity? Why are you doing it? Why are you still doing it?
Right. Well, I retired as a corporate consultant and trainer about in late 2018, and I was looking how I can follow my passion. And one of my passions is percussion and drums. So I was invited to a drum circle that was sponsored by the autistic community. And when I started learning more about the community and more about there's a need for direct supports or self-directed employees, that's how I became involved. So I really wanted to follow that passion. I was still am, belong to Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I mentored 4 young men. So I was wondering how can I take my transferable skills I learned from corporate, but also through Big Brothers Big Sisters and support people that need assistance.
So Joe, you are the, in my opening segment, I was talking about people who wind up in the as self-directed employees that may not have ever, wanted to work at a provider or understood the track of being hired at a provider agency. So you retired from a successful career and then found this opportunity. As you said, you explored the drum circle. So tell us like what in this next chapter has been, a real important aspect of the work that you're doing.
Well, I find there's a need in the community. That's something I really want to do in my retirement. It's semi-retirement, if you will, and working more hours probably. But if I became a job coach through Bog Center training, so I want to continue to learn. I went through Charting the Life to be an ambassador. So I really want to continue to learn and grow in this community and find out how I can provide some support. If you see the banner behind me, I also joined the collaborative on the interactive map facilitator. So if you're looking for SDEs, that's a great place to go. So I just want to continue to learn. That's why I'm really privileged to be on the board. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thanks, Joe. And we're going to clone you at the end of this session, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So to wrap up our panel session, we have our 2 fiscal intermediaries, our Jocelyn Summers, who's here representing Easter Seals, New Jersey. She's the operations manager. And we have Ken Smith, who is with Public Partnerships. So we're going to start with Jocelyn. And I'm going to ask you, Jocelyn, if you could talk to us about how individuals with IDD and their families are supported in Easter Seals on a daily basis. And if you could mention how you onboard a new self-directed employee and about how long that takes. I've heard that question out there.
Okay, what a wonderful question to ask, Mercedes. And I'm more than happy to explain Agency with Choice's process to onboard a new self-directed employee. Agency with Choice supports its individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities and their families by providing high-quality customer service. Our Agency with Choice customer service representatives pride themselves on upholding the Easter Seals team values, which are respectfulness, warmth, and expertise. This team is staffed with local residents who like to support their community and the people in them. From the moment an individual and their family chooses Agency with Choice as their fiscal intermediary model, a customer service representative is there to guide them through the process. Currently, we have two avenues that an individual can go through, which are transitioning from Easter Seal's old fiscal intermediary model to the new Agency with Choice program, or the new enrollment where the individual is brand new to financial management services fiscal intermediary model. When an individual transitions from Easter Seal's old fiscal intermediary model into the new financial management services model Agency of Choice, an experienced and knowledgeable customer service representative contacts the managing employer and reviews the transitioning process with them. They inform the managing employer the steps associated with transitioning into Agency of Choice, which include the receipt of the Agency of Choice welcome letter, managing employer review guide, how to complete documents through Adobe Sign, who to contact, answer any general questions about the program, and the average time it should take for their individual's plan to be active in Agency of Choice. The average turnaround time for an individual to transition into Agency of Choice is about 8 to 10 business days for the fiscal intermediary model. When an individual and their family chooses Agency of Choice as their fiscal intermediary model and are not already a part of the Agency of Choice family, their staff must go through a new hire process conducted by an Agency of Choice human resources onboarding specialist. Once our Agency of Choice team receives the individual's demographics, a customer service representative will contact the managing employer to fill out a new hire application request form on their behalf. During this time, the customer service representative collects potential staff, contact information, and submits the application. After the Agency of Choice Human Resources team receives the new hire application request form, it'll take about 5 business days to onboard the staff. Simultaneously, our Agency of Choice verification team is preparing and sending out the enrollment documents to the individual, family, and their self-directed employee for completion. The enrollment process for a new individual into Agency of Choice can take about 8 to 10 business days once they're onboarded into our system. The transitioning process into Agency of Choice is a bit shorter than the new enrollment process because the staff are already in our systems and do not need to go through our human resources new hire process. We here at Agency with Choice aim to make the transition and enrollment process as smooth and easy as possible because we understand that our consumers deserve not to have their services and supports interrupted. An individual, family, and staff who are part of the Agency of Choice family will always be able to contact a customer service representative via phone or email. With our state-of-the-art Zendesk ticketing system, customer service representatives can accurately document phone calls for the best quality assurance. They also make it a priority to respond to all inquiries they receive through email, phone call, or voicemail within 24 hours. We have also implemented a follow-up process that requires the customer service team to follow up on any question, comment, or concern the individual, family, or staff have to make sure that they've got the clarified answers. This ensures that all individuals, families, and their self-directed employees' concerns are being addressed in an appropriate time frame. Thank you.
Excellent, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. And Ann Smith with PPL, we're going to ask you the same question about how the individual and their families are supported by PPL outside of the role of the consultant, which we already heard about. And then just kind of, if you could also talk about that onboarding a new self-directed employee, that'd be great, Ken.
Absolutely, Mercedes, happy to. And I just want to mention that Suzanne Crisp from our team is with me here as well. So we'll tag team a bit here.
Okay.
Great. So in the DDD program, much like the PPP program, we do offer more of a tailored approach to helping the individual and their employee on board. And it was mentioned earlier that in PPP, the personal preference program, it's what we call the consultant. But with the DDD program, PPP offers enrollment support to all individuals and employers of record that are referred to PPL. So what this includes is a welcome introductory call. And in that call, we schedule an enrollment walkthrough. Then we complete the enrollment walkthrough with the employer of record and the self-directed employee to make sure we get them set up. And then we take questions and make sure that they're very comfortable and that we offer the support that they're inviting, that they're choosing to have. It's really important in the FEA model, fiscal employer agent or fiscal intermediary, that we're not doing more than an individual is requesting, asking for, because it then becomes less empowering if you're just almost acting like an agency, providing all these services when this individual has actually chosen self-direction. So then at PPL, we have an enrollment processing team in the background that takes all this work that our enrollment support has done with the individual, and we process the paperwork and we update all of the checklist of the various items, the I-9, the W-4 in our system. And once the employer of record is ready to start, then we have the workers' compensation that we have to process, and we then communicate the billable rate from the individual's budget to the support coordinator. And we heard from the support coordinators earlier. So it's quite a few steps there, and the workers' comp can be one of the longer and one of the more complicated ones. So we really make sure that the enrollment support person for DDD is shepherding that and making sure, where there might be a bump in the road with the workers' comp policy purchase, that we're there to help walk it through. So to answer your question, Mercedes, about timeline, so all of these steps takes about 2.5 weeks for the employer of record, and then the self-directed employee enrollment takes about 1 to 2 weeks. So what we're doing, though, is making that concurrent, so it's not sequential. And then,
Sure.
Suzanne, would you offer a color or additional details or a little bit more thoughts than what I provided?
Sure. I just want to say that the level of efficiency that the supports offer, and by supports, we're talking about the financial management services, whether it's FEA or whether it's agency with choice, has a lot to do with how the individual feels about enrollment. Are they confused? It is a daunting process, and PPL doesn't make it a daunting process. We have the Department of Labor and IRS that helps us make it all a daunting progress. But the efficiency and effectiveness of the supports that we provide does help the individual enjoy the experience of self-direction. It lets him or her concentrate on managing the worker, getting the things that they need, and then either the agency with choice or PPL make sure everything else is running smoothly. The only other thing I'll say is that we at PPL thank you all so much for inviting us to the conference. It has given us new perspective, a renewed spirit of partnership, and we so thank you for doing that, and hope we can be a part of more things to come in the future.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jocelyn. And none of you are off the hook, okay? This panel has been excellent, but your good work will come with some punishment, because we'll have you come back to other sessions this month in March. You won't get off the hook that easy. Wow, we certainly covered a lot of turf tonight. Again, these were, I'll call these the snippets of what the rest of the month will bring to you. Part 2 this Thursday from noon to 6 p.m. Look at those sessions at the site, on the website for the Self-Direction Conference. Select all of them and register for all, or what you think you need more in-depth information about. And then the rest of the sessions this month, please come back. Remember that this is recorded, and we're able to, you'll be able to watch it on demand. We also want to make sure that we got to your questions. And I see that because of this great panel, a lot of the questions were answered as we went along. We are at the end of our time now, but anything that did not get answered, we will make sure that we feed back to the planning team, and we'll make sure that we cover it in the sessions that you can participate in between now and the end of March. So Congratulations, panel. You all did a great job. Thank you, participants, attendees for listening in. There's so many of you. We appreciate it. And we are, this is just the beginning. We look forward to seeing you all at the upcoming sessions in March. So thank you, sign language interpreters. Thank you both very much. We appreciate your time tonight as well.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.